People are not going to believe you based on all the things they've been raised to believe. It doesn't mean you can't be believed. And it doesn't mean your worth and your value should be questioned. But maybe their thoughts should be challenged because they're ridiculous. Hey, friend, welcome back to the Art of Managing Your Brain podcast. I'm so grateful to have you with me today. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes, and today we're tackling an issue that is as frustrating as it is pervasive. It's what I call the believability bias. Now, you all know this one, but we're going to get into it a little bit, all right? Imagine you're in a meeting. You're equipped with insight, expertise, and solutions that no one else seems to have thought of. You have done your homework. You know your stuff, and you make your case with clarity and logic, only to be ignored, interrupted, or dismissed. And then hours or sometimes even minutes later, somebody else repeats the exact same thing. And suddenly the idea is brilliant. Suddenly it's valid. Suddenly it's their idea. If this has happened to you or anything like this, let me be the first to say to you, this is not in your head. It's real. It's systemic. And it has nothing to do with how prepared you were, the tone of your voice, or what you wore. Did you wear flats? Did you wear heels? What color was your lipstick? None of that. It has nothing to do with you. And it's what I call the believability bias. And this is the fifth part of my dissertation framework. And this is what we're going to get into today. Before we jump into this, I just want to take a quick moment to pause and acknowledge something important that I try to do every so often about the lens that I bring to this conversation. Now, as many of you know, I speak to you as a cis het white woman living in the US, married with kids, middle-class soccer mom, and the insights that I share are informed by my own lived experience, my own social location, and the specific research that's grounded in my doctoral work that is specific to the topics that I cover in this show. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm just obsessed with it. But I do have a doctorate, and this is my research. I don't claim to speak for anybody else. I don't claim to speak for men. And I don't claim to speak for people whose experiences differ from mine. And I approach these topics with a sense of deep humility and a deep respect for the diversity of perspectives that are out there. The work that I'm doing is based in my own social location, and I encourage all other demographics to continue this work. And in any way I can be supportive and helpful, I'm here to do that as an ally. You will often hear me use terms like systemic issues, socialization, and socialized patriarchy. Let me explain what I mean so that we're all on the same page, especially if you're a new listener, so I can bring you up to speed, okay? Systemic issues refer to the deeply ingrained cultural norms, power structures, and societal dynamics that shape our lives, many of which we've internalized without even realizing it. Socialization is the process by which we're taught what's expected of us based on factors like gender, race, or social roles. And socialized patriarchy refers to the ways in which these systems prioritize certain power dynamics, often disadvantaging women or marginalized groups. But it also boxes everybody else, including men, into limiting roles. This affects everybody. Look, here's the stark truth for my listeners. These systems impact everybody, especially here in the United States, but they show up differently based on our unique identities and our unique circumstances, our own stories and experiences, and the social locations and belief systems that we have been raised in. And while my perspective reflects my own lived experience, all of these tools and strategies that I share here are designed to empower anybody who resonates with any of these challenges. So whether you share my background or you come from a completely different social location, my hope is that these insights help you navigate these dynamics with clarity, confidence, and compassion, not only for yourself, but for others, especially those that are not like you. This space is for you, wherever you're coming from. And I deeply value the opportunity to walk alongside you on your journey. If you ever have questions, comments, if you feel like your perspective isn't conveyed here, remember, I'm only speaking from my lived experiences, and I cannot wait to listen to yours. All right. Now back to the topic today, what I call the believability bias. Here's what this is all about. This isn't just about the external dynamics of bias. It's also about what's happening inside your brain and your body when you are encountering this, and how these automatic responses might inadvertently reinforce the very patterns you're trying to disrupt. So in today's episode, we're going to break this down in 4 powerful ways. First, the believability bias unveiled. What is it, where it comes from, and why it shows up so often in workplaces. Second, the neurobehavioral connection. What's happening in your brain and body when you're dismissed or overlooked, and why these stress responses can sometimes work against you. Third, systemic and social factors. How societal norms and workplace dynamics fuel this bias, keeping it alive and well. And finally, practical strategies, tools to navigate these dynamics, reclaim your authority, and protect your mental and emotional energy. This episode is about naming the problem, understanding its roots, and most importantly, equipping you with actionable tools to take back control. So if you are ready to learn all about what I call the believability bias, then let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornis, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
All right, friend, but before we dive in, I have 2 quick asks. First, if you found this podcast remotely helpful, could you take 30 seconds to leave us a review? Your feedback amplifies this message and it helps other ambitious women like you discover these tools. Second, if you haven't already taken my Thought Saboteur quiz, you should run there now. Well, after the show. It's free and it'll help you identify the thought patterns that might be sabotaging your confidence. You can find the link in the show notes or at charliehorniscoaching.com/quiz. This is going to help you identify if you're struggling with being a self-doubter. Are you an approval seeker? Are you a perfectionist? Are you overthinking? Are you an avoider? Are these your saboteur personalities? So run over and grab that quiz, and you can get it at charliehorniscoaching.com/quiz. And if this episode resonates, would you please share it with a friend? It just takes a second to hit that share button. And together we can change the way women are showing up and are heard in the workplace. Let's start by defining the believability bias. At its core, this is a subconscious tendency to assign more credibility and authority to certain voices and not others. But more often than not, these voices are of men or members of dominant groups, while discrediting or dismissing others like women or marginalized individuals. This isn't just a feeling that you have when you're in the midst of this. It's a deeply ingrained social and cognitive bias perpetuated by a combination of systemic structures, cultural conditionings, and even neurological shortcuts your brain takes to process information quickly. Here's what the bias looks like in action. First, implicit bias in leadership traits. Leadership qualities like decisiveness, assertiveness, and confidence have long been coded as masculine. Okay, so why is this happening? Let's look at it from first an evolutionary perspective, something that we can see not only in humans, but in many mammals. Humans historically equated authority with physical dominance. And we see this in the animal kingdom when you have specific alpha male animals that dominate whatever pack or group that they're living in. And this became symbolically tied to certain traits that are perceived as strong or authoritative. Other times, societal norms cemented these traits as masculine. Now, this isn't in every culture, but we do see a lot of this in the United States. And it can topple into what we call toxic masculinity. And again, this is not about individual people. This is a systemic belief system that permeates and invades our society. And often we don't see it. We don't even know it's there because we've been immersed in it our entire lives. This isn't about individual people, and it's definitely not a bash on anybody. This is just the system that we are currently living in. And I'm not sure it's going to change anytime soon. Hopefully, I'll be doing an episode soon on that systemic issue of toxic masculinity and unpack that a little bit more. We're going to talk about what it looks like for women, again, because that's my experience. When women exhibit the same traits, these masculine, strong, dominant traits, such as decisiveness or confidence, they're often seen as too aggressive or difficult. Conversely, if women lean into empathy or emotional intelligence, we're dismissed as too sensitive or not serious enough for leadership. As always, when we're looking through the lens of thought work and how to manage our minds, these traits that women exhibit, these are the circumstances. If we were to look at the model, the C line, the circumstances and these traits women exhibit are neutral. But society's thoughts about those traits are what create the feelings of discomfort or distrust, leading to dismissive actions that perpetuate this bias, keeps this cycle going. Second, emotional dismissal. This bias often shows up in the way emotions are interpreted and valued. So here's a little science tidbit. Research in gender and emotional regulation has found that women's expressions of emotions, whether frustration, passion, excitement, or concern, are more likely to be labeled as irrational or overreactions. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to have their emotions interpreted as strength or conviction. Now, here's just a little personal anecdote about me. I've learned over time the hard way that when I get excited or passionate about a topic, I come across angry. I only know this because I've been told it, and not in any kind of nice way. Apparently, when I get excited, passionate, really worked up about something that I'm excited about, something I want to put all my effort and energy into, I'm angry. And that's not true. I'm not angry. I'm excited. And initially it used to hurt my feelings because I didn't understand what was happening. But then I started to remember, do they tell this to male colleagues that get excited and passionate about a topic or a project? And I started watching. No, they didn't. And men were passionate about topics and projects at work all the time. I never once heard anybody tell them they were angry. But I got told this often. and I didn't understand it at the time. Let's look at some neurobehavioral insights. And again, my own experience is why I'm so absolutely obsessed with all of these topics. This is partly because of the brain's reliance on heuristics, mental shortcuts that simplify complex evaluations. When a woman is assertive or emotional in a high stakes situation, the brain's implicit bias may miscategorize her behavior as threatening or unprofessional. Now, how does this impact women? This dynamic often leaves women in what we call a double bind. Now, I've talked about double binds before on different topics, but for this particular topic, this is what the double bind, as an example, would look like. First, you must suppress your emotions and then be perceived as cold. We've all been there. Or you can express your emotions and take the risk that you'll be seen as irrational. Which one are you going to choose? The next piece is the selective credibility. The believability bias is perhaps most apparent in how women are disproportionately asked to prove it. Now, what does this look like? Women are often asked for more data, more qualifications, or credentials before their ideas are accepted. Now, again, a personal anecdote. In my field, women typically, in order to get the better jobs, have to have our doctorate degree, our practical terminal degree, in order to compete with men who have less experience, often are younger, and only have master's degrees. And often they still get hired ahead of us, more often than not. And again, there's a lot of research to back it up. I'm sure I can have a lot of my friends jump in on the comments here and talk about how that's the only reason they did like I did and got their doctorate in our field, because they had to compete with men who had master's degrees. So we're asked to do more. I cannot tell you how many times in my working life I have needed somebody to get a male to corroborate what I was saying in order for it to be believed. They'd be like, "Hey, Joe, John, Jim, Bob, Bill, come over here. What do you think about?" And I'd be like, "Really?" And often I was in charge, but I still needed to have a male corroborate my credibility. It's fascinating how this stuff is systemic. It's happening everywhere. Now, why is this happening? This phenomenon is tied to confirmation bias. What is that? That is when people unconsciously seek information that aligns with their pre-existing beliefs. If a woman doesn't fit the stereotypical mold of a leader or an expert, her contributions are filtered through a lens of skepticism. So right out of the gate, often working women's credibility is questioned. Now we have what we call the systemic reinforcement. Workplace cultures that prioritize hierarchical power dynamics over collaboration tend to amplify this bias, making it harder for marginalized voices, including female, to break through. Here's the thing I want to drive home. This bias isn't just about individual interactions. It's not about specific people, although specific people are what is continuing the cycle. This is deeply embedded in workplace systems, leadership norms, and societal expectations. This means that when you are dealing with these things and you have that yucky feeling in your gut, but you don't know exactly what's going on, and you're frustrated because you don't feel like your point is being heard, you're being taken seriously, or that you're in need of corroboration in order for you to have credibility. If you're feeling that in your gut, You're not imagining things. The pattern is real. But that doesn't mean that you're powerless. All right, I want to switch into talking about our brain's role in this believability bias. So to fully understand this dynamic, let's explore what's happening in your brain during these interactions, in the midst of them, when it's happening, and you may be absolutely lost in the middle of fight or flight, blindsided, T-boned, don't know what's going on, and every word is just fluttered out of your brain. The first one is what we call cognitive economy. Your brain is a resource efficient machine. When it encounters a situation that requires judgment, like evaluating someone's credibility, it relies on shortcuts like stereotypes to save energy. We always go back to that motivational triad of your brain, the three things that your brain is constantly in charge of: being safe, chasing things that feel good. Feel good means be safe. Not dead. Things that don't feel good equals you're dead. And saving energy, conserving energy so that you can always at any time run away from the bear that's chasing you. So your brain is constantly taking shortcuts, using things like stereotypes to save energy. Now, here's another part that I find fascinating about how our brains work in this context. There are these little tiny neurons called mirror neurons. So these neurons, which play a role in empathy and understanding, can unconsciously reinforce bias. Empathy is a double-edged sword because when we see somebody struggling, this isn't sympathy where we feel sorry for them, but we can put ourselves in their shoes. We can almost imagine what they're feeling. We can feel the sorrow, the sadness, and we can deeply empathize with another person. And it's our neurons that are mirroring the behavior and the feelings. But if someone's goal is not to empathize with you, even if they don't know they're doing it, whether it's due to some sort of systemic bias like gender, race, or any other difference, they may struggle to empathize with your perspective or trust your expertise. Our neurons mirror one another. But if you come into an office and you are dealing with high stress, if you are upset about a situation that's happened, the person you're talking to, often the person you're hoping is going to, have your back and handle the situation and enforce rules and HR policies. If they start mirroring your stress, and it's not because of the neutral circumstances of what's happening around you that you're struggling with, they actually put it on you. That you are creating the yucky feeling within them, your person, your being in their orbit, when that's not the case at all. But other people's brains, they don't know that's what's happening. So they correlate you with the feelings that they're mirroring in their neurons of how you're feeling, how you're presenting yourself, your disposition in the moment. And instead of being able to empathize using the mirror neurons to get in your shoes, to understand the situation is not working or whatever, they instead, depending on whether or not they can see themselves within you, they can associate your behavior with them feeling bad. And then you become the cause of them feeling bad. So it's a double-edged sword, and it's really fascinating. You have to exactly know who you're dealing with. You cannot expect people to empathize with your struggles if they don't trust your expertise or if they've already been socialized to doubt your credibility. Next, we're going to talk about the role that neuroplasticity plays in your brain. So here's the good news about this part. I love neuroplasticity. Every time we talk about it, you need to know this is where the good news comes. Your brain's ability to rewire itself means that these biases can be disrupted, both in others and in yourself. The first step always is awareness. You too have believability biases. One of the best things you can do is pay attention to the first thoughts and feelings that you have when you interact with somebody different from you, and pay attention to how you think about whether they're credible or not. Are you looking at facts that can be proven in a court of law? Do they have the right experience and credentialing? And are they doing the right work? Or are you judging them based on something entirely different? I've got a place now where I can put everybody's resources in one storefront. What's really cool is when you use the what we call affiliate links, and I'm now becoming an affiliate for a whole bunch of different things. It's all on my website at charliehornesscoaching.com. And it's on the bonus resources page. What happens is when you purchase something off of that, a portion of it goes back to the show. And so what you're doing basically when you buy from there is you're supporting the show at no additional cost to you, which is kind of like the coolest thing ever. It's going to help us continue to create content for you and bring on incredible guests that are, they blow my mind. So I'm hoping they will blow your mind too, whether it's metaphysics and psychology and theology or high fantasy romance. You're going to find your next favorite read right there. Let's go. All right. I want to pause here and say this. If you've been dismissed, interrupted, or underestimated, if you've had to prove your own credibility, it's not because you lack value. It's because of a deeply rooted system that wasn't designed to see you for who you are. But here's a little bit of empowerment. Understanding this bias is the key to navigating it effectively, and it changes the game entirely. Once you see what you're dealing with, once you see somebody is not empathizing with you, and what you think them mirroring your feelings and your actions is actually associating you with them feeling bad and them not wanting to be around you, which is not at all the case. So we remember when we talk about the model that our thoughts are what drive our feelings, and our feelings are what fuel our actions. So you have the 5 lines of the model: circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. So C line, circumstances. In our T line, our thoughts. It's the thought that the person has that creates the F line, the feeling, and that fuels the A line, the action. And that's how we end up with the R line, your results. So you can start that model at any line and work it forwards and backwards. So if you've internalized bias, believing the dismissal of your ideas actually mean that you lack credibility, you're more likely to feel defeated and retreat. When we talk about thought work, the question is, what if you choose different thoughts? So let's say the thought is, their reaction is about their conditioning, not my work. How would you feel? Well, in this example, maybe you feel more resilient. Maybe you can say, oh, their reaction is about their conditioning, their social location, what they were raised to believe, a whole bunch of neurons firing in their brain, thoughts being spewed at them that they take as fact, and they don't even see that they're doing it. And that is causing how they feel, which causes their actions and their results. None of that has anything to do with your worth. Their reaction is about their conditioning, not my worth. When you think a different thought, you feel something different. In this case, we'll say it's resiliency. So then you take an action based on that new thought and feeling, and you continue to contribute, to strategize, and to find ways to amplify your voice rather than allowing somebody else's made up thoughts that are generating their feelings, actions, and results to identify whether or not you are worthy. And if you think a different thought, you're going to get a different result. You will show up with authority, regardless of what somebody's brain is spitting thoughts at them about you because of their own social conditioning that has nothing to do with you personally. Again, systemic. It's not individual. These are thoughts they have about anybody that might fit the mold that you are fitting and triggering whatever's inside of them that they've been raised to believe. So you can still, with new thoughts, show up with authority regardless of these external dynamics. So understanding the believability bias means that you can stop personalizing this. You know, people tell you all the time, if you're anything like me, sensitive and thoughtful, don't take it personally. Don't be so sensitive. But nobody tells you how to not take something personal. Because typically, especially for women, what's being attacked is our person. Therefore, it's extremely hard not to take something personally. This is how you don't take things personal, through thought work. Understanding other people's thoughts are entirely made up in their brains, have nothing to do with anything, based in nothing, are not fact, cannot be proven in a court of law, and they're just words, sentences running through their gray matter in their brain. And they decide to believe them as if they're fact. They don't even question or challenge the thoughts they're having. They simply act on them automatically. And once you understand that their words and thoughts have zero meaning, you can start to laugh at it because it's ridiculous. That means you don't have to personalize it. It's not about you. It's how their brain is seeing the world around them. Circumstances are entirely neutral. How we make circumstances have meaning is our brain interpreting the circumstance itself. And that interpretation is different for everybody. If you walk into my office and I'm your boss and you're a woman, I'm not going to need you to corroborate what you're saying with another person that has leadership qualities. I'm doing quotes if you're listening, because that person happens to be a male. And I've been raised to believe that leaders can only be blah, 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 blah. It can be the exact same circumstance. And yet I, as a leader, will have an entirely different feeling, action, and result based on how I interpret the circumstance of you walking into my office. People are not going to believe you based on all the things they've been raised to believe. It doesn't mean you can't be believed. And it doesn't mean your worth and your value should be questioned. But maybe their thoughts should be challenged. This is not about you. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you stop popping into fight or flight and getting hijacked by your amygdala and letting your survival mechanism run the show because you feel like you're being attacked. The minute you realize the person is not a bear and they cannot eat you, they cannot. I'm pretty sure HR is going to get involved before that happens. You are not in life-threatening danger. It's just their opinion. It's how their brain is interpreting whatever it is that you triggered in them when you walked in the door. And the fact that they cannot challenge those thoughts, the fact that they're going to die in a ditch over whatever nonsense it is pretty funny. So don't get hijacked, belly laugh. That's what this is about. So this is systemic patterns and cognitive shortcuts that can and must be challenged. So stay with me, okay? Because in the next segment, we're going to dive into what's happening inside your brain and body, and when you encounter this bias and how to reclaim that power in those moments. So keep showing up for yourself. Take care of your mind, protect your energy, and remember, you are capable of creating the change you deserve.